This is a rabbit hole unlike any you've seen before. There is a person who is being erased from reality. The evidence I'll be covering, and how I believe each element connects to each other, to my knowledge, has not been covered by any major or minor news outlets. There is a group, an organisation, or collection of people who want to keep this case buried. That ends today. Our story begins with the Florida Department of Criminal Justice, or rather an iteration of their website from October of 2003. Under the website's Death Row Information page, you'll find a list of executed convicts. The list has every convict's last name, first name, date of birth, gender, date received, county of which they're held within, and date of offence. All with information behind a link of who they are and what they did. All but one. No date of birth or gender. Just a name and the date they're incarcerated. T. William. Convicted on July 8th, 2002. Strange, albeit explainable. The fact that this is the last result on an incredibly lengthy list could mean it just slipped by. However, if you skip forward to the following day's archive, the listing is gone. In fact, in every archive after October 2003, T. William is nowhere to be found. Like I said, this could all be chalked up to human error. What pushed me to search further is a date of incarceration. Throughout the rest of the death row list, there are no other inmates who are incarcerated on the 8th of July 2002, which proves strange, as if this was a mistake, and I don't think we'd see a date this specific. And what's even stranger is that there's no explanation on the site, no notice put out that this was a mistake on their end, or an external source reporting on a death row inmate being incarcerated on the 8th of July. There's nothing. Complete radio silence. If a person has carried out a crime serious enough to warrant execution, then surely there'd be some kind of coverage on this case. Why is no one talking about T. William? I began looking. The 8th of July, 2002. T. William. Every government website, every list of death row inmates. I looked everywhere you might find a missing inmate. Until the state of Florida versus Senator Picard. I won't bore you with the details, but to summarise, a former Florida senator got wrapped up in a scandal involving various fraudulent uses of the state's resources. An investigation began on Picard. Bank statements and emails from his time as senator were subpoenaed, and a Freedom of Information request was sent, with a large file with all evidence pertaining to the case was released, with an addendum that any personal or sensitive information be redacted. Pages upon pages of redaction, more than just private information. Entire exchanges are redacted for seemingly no reason. The issue with this redaction is that at some point, during either a re-upload or an update on the document editor they used, a handful of the black boxes are shifted up, ever so slightly, meaning portions of the document that are not meant to be viewed can be deciphered. Here's how we can do it. Let's take the name Tucker. Through trial and error, we can line up each letter until we find a match. T-U-C-K-E-R. Tucker. Out of all the redacted pages on this document, one stands out. An email exchange between Senator Picard and an unknown person. Yep, he knows. Marge said there were 2 suits asking about papers for our missing death row inmate. Might not have been federal, DOJ. If this is something I should stay out of, say so. Neither. We can talk tonight. For now, read Travis_William_info_internal. A death row inmate with the initials T. William. Furthermore, the manner of which they're talking about Travis is, of course, discouraging. The link to the file does not work, but this exchange gives me something better than the emails. Dates. If we go by the death row listing, Travis was incarcerated on the 8th of July. These emails were sent just 6 days prior. So I narrowed my search. Not by name, but time. I began combing through public records from that week. Local news archives, incident logs, and dispatch records. Anything that might explain why a supposedly incarcerated individual would be discussed as missing. And then I found something. It comes from an old GeoCities website, one where a man by the name of Benny would document any noteworthy calls he heard for a police scanner he owned. Here's how Benny described it. Residents of the great state of Florida, do you want to know where your tax dollars are going? What the so-called law enforcement does whilst Al-Qaeda roams our streets? Great. Here on Blue Beat Benny, you'll get accurate, up-to-date transcriptions of every police call that comes through my scanner. From the looks of it, Benny was somewhat of an archivist, categorising every call from from 2001 to 2009. And of course, under July 7, 2002, we've got our transcription. 911 call, first exit northbound, caller reports male, injured, possibly bleeding, units 12 and 14 respond. Copy, en route. Copy, northbound approach. Civilian reports male, subject identified himself as Travis. Caller reports subject's manic state and that he departed before the call was made. Units 12 and 14 maintain visual on scene, approach with caution. Copy, approaching area, no visual yet. Stand by, all units hold position. Say again. All units disregard previous call, cancel response, no units needed. Copy, standing down. Standing by. A caller reports an injured man by the name of Travis, who appears unstable and dashes at the thought of police. What's strange about this call is that if this is Travis William, who somehow managed to escape death row or get on the run before his incarceration, why wouldn't units be told to keep an eye out for an escapee convict? Why was this seemingly legitimate call cancelled last minute? Is it possible that someone wanted to keep him missing? And unfortunately, I didn't have to look very far to prove this line of questioning right. Posted in October of 2008 on ECPDR, a chat site for retired police officers on the East Coast. A thread is started by user Doyle. Any cases you wish you knew more about? I was on the force for 20 odd years, and I feel like half the guys I knew have a story they wish they could have followed up on. Nothing crazy, just funny characters or things that are a little supernatural, I guess. Was wondering if anyone had anything like that. Not supernatural. Got a call about a shouting match in the suburb near me. We check it out and it's a divorced couple arguing about who gets to keep the dog. Nothing of interest, got the guy to fuck off after 5 minutes or so. But the dog was cute. We busted a meth lab being run out of the back of an abandoned school bus. No wheels and the seats were ripped off. The tables that they had their equipment on were bigger than the doors. Always wondered how they got them in there. Felt inappropriate to ask. Finally, I can tell one of my own stories. This was 2 years before I retired, so 02 or 03. It was one of 1,000 calls. There's a crackhead or something on the side of the road, and he's waving down cars. So this woman pulls up and asks if he needs any help. Funny enough, I knew the girl. She was a paramedic, so we crossed paths every now and then. Anyway, she pulls over and gets a good look at him. He's wearing a jumpsuit, and it's bright orange. Not inmate orange, bright orange. With a weird symbol on its breast, like a circle or something. Then she notices he's pretty beat up, bruised on the side of the head like he's been hit by something, and his legs were bleeding enough for it to soak through. So she tries talking to him, but he's either high or insane or both. So she thinks fuck it, gets out her phone to call 911, and after she's done dialing, she looks up, and the guy's limping away into the night. And then he's completely gone. She reports that back to the operator, and we head over. I swear I'm a minute away from where she's at, and it gets called off. We're already heading past, and I'm a nosy bastard, so as we drove past, I try and see if she's still there. And she is. But she's not alone. It's two men. They're in windbreakers and look a little like feds, but they have no kind of identification. None that I could see. One's got a little notebook, and it seems like he's taking notes, whilst the other talks to her. We're going fast, so I don't see their faces, but I see hers. She's scared. Scared of them. I call into dispatch again and ask if they're certain about the call. They say to let sleeping dogs lie, but I can't knock the feeling that something's off, so the next day after this bridge collapses, I see her again, at the ER on a smoke break with her driver, and she looks like death. After a little, probably unnecessary pestering on my end, she goes briefly into the details of the call, but doesn't bring up the two men. So I prod further, and she tells me to drop it. A couple weeks later, I'm back at the ER talking to a pharmacist about missing inventory, and I run into her driver. We catch up, and I ask about her. He winces a little, and says she left about a day after we last spoke, leaving a letter saying she needed a break and that she's staying with family in Massachusetts. Apparently it was about as abrupt as it seems. He sees her the night before at the end of their shift, and says that she seemed fine, a little tired, but fine. Then the next day, she's nowhere to be found, and isn't responding to any calls. The weird thing is, aside from the orange jumpsuit wearing crackhead and the men in black, the driver tells me she had no real family. Most were either no contact or dead. All she had was her driver and roommate. Even stranger is that she's from North Dakota, not Massachusetts. So we had no idea who she was going to see. If we're willing to take this story at face value, and that was Travis on the side of the road, and the only person who had any kind of contact with him was questioned by the so-called men in black right after giving his location, this not only raises more questions, but seriously calls into question Travis's safety. If he has been captured by some third party, What are they doing to him that causes those bruises and the cuts on his leg? I think it's best to establish a timeline with the information we currently have before I continue any further. On the 2nd of July 2002, two agents requested information from the office of a Florida senator on Travis William, a death row inmate who is yet to be incarcerated, but is already described as missing. An internal document is created around this time about Travis and possibly his disappearance. 5 days later, Travis is seen on the side of the road, grievously injured. A local paramedic spots him, but Travis runs away as soon as she calls for help. After our paramedic makes a call, officers that are nearby are told the call was a false alarm, although moments later, two unknown men are seen talking to the alarmed woman. A week goes by and she leaves to go to Massachusetts to stay with a family that doesn't exist. On July 8th, Travis supposedly enters death row. A year goes by and the only public acknowledgement of Travis is put on the Florida Department of Criminal Justice website, with no actual information about who he is. The following day, it's removed. There's so many loose ends with this case. Why was the real 911 call flagged as a false alarm? Why was Travis described as missing well before he was incarcerated? Who are the people who requested information on Travis, who aren't federal or DOJ agents? Who are the men who interrogated an innocent woman after making a seemingly mundane 911 call? I think I might have one answer. I apologise, but I haven't been entirely truthful. Captioned, Dad died last week, going through his office to sort shit for the will. He worked in some kind of government research. We'll post anything of note here. An image of a manila envelope, written on its front, experiments involving D-Class 9491513. The 11th of February to the 12th of April. Below it, T. William. Posted in 2011, this is the last record of Travis. If we use the same trick as before and line up each letter to the text at the bottom of the folder reads, SCP Foundation. Like Travis, this organisation provides no results on any search engine, nor appears anywhere outside of this single post. I reached out to mDolphin74 to ask if the symbol on the folder was the same as the one on the breast of Travis's shirt, but the account has not been active for around 20 years. It's a tragic end, if we're to assume that this is where Travis ended up, either in a place or with a group of people who we know nothing about, then it seems unlikely that Travis will ever see the light of day. But we can theorise. I don't think it's a major logical leap to assume that the same people who first came to Picard's office were also the ones who spoke to the paramedic on the highway. Perhaps, and this is just speculation, members of the Florida government had some kind of arrangement with this SCP, which would result in a removal of Travis from all records and for him to not be incarcerated, but instead sent to the Foundation to be experimented on in some way. But Travis escaped, presumably not long after being taken away, and looked for any help he could get, but decided his chances were better off alone than in the hands of any authority. My other theory is based slightly less on speculation. Travis William may not have been the man on the side of the road, and the T. William on the file may have just been a misspelling of the trillium flower, a species native to the temperate regions of North America. Maybe SCP stands for Society of the Cultivation of Plant Life. These could all be disparate, unimportant stories that coincidentally lined up to cause confusion along the actual disappearance of Travis. At least that's what I thought. After finishing writing this video, on a whim, I decided to double check the original death row page. Once again, I clicked through the calendar. The following months, the following years. There it was again, a name and nothing else. S. Peel. I kept searching the site. M. Burner. W. Hartford. I didn't just find a handful, but 25 others. Just within this time frame, within this state, all with no information about who they actually are and what they did. Travis wasn't an anomaly. Just the first one I noticed, which means this is still happening. People are being removed, and there is nothing there is nothing Travis Travis